Have you ever wondered what would happen to a curious person if they found a dangerous magical book? Jack is an ordinary young man, a college student living alone in a small house in Central America. On an ordinary day in his life, he came across a mysterious book in an old market, The Lesser Key of Solomon. From that moment on, everything changed. Instead of preparing for his exams, he faced a demonic entity every night. So how will he escape this terrifying nightmare? Although the story is scary, it is inspired by a famous real-life book in the world of black magic. Follow the story to the end, and experience the horror with us, moment by moment. My name is Jack. I'm 20 years old, and I live alone in a small suburb about an hour outside New York City. I study English literature at a local university, and I don't have many friends, not because I hate people, but because I simply prefer solitude. There's something about silence that makes me feel safe, as if the world stops for a moment to catch its breath. I live in an old house I inherited from my grandmother. It's located on a nearly deserted street, where the houses are spaced far apart, and tall trees sometimes shade the sky. The house is too spacious for one person, with 3 bedrooms and a basement I've never entered. Its smell reminds me of dust and dampness, and sometimes, something else I can't explain. My daily routine is simple. I wake up at 6 a.m., make my coffee, read a little before heading to university, catch up on lectures, then return home, have a snack, and spend the evening browsing through the pages of my small library or searching the internet for strange things. Yes, strange things. I have a hidden fascination with all things dark, mysterious, and forbidden, ancient magic books, rituals told in whispers, symbols said to open doors no one should touch. Don't ask me why. I don't believe in magic or ghosts, but there's something eerie about the unknown, something that draws me toward it whenever I feel bored or empty. One day, I was wandering through a popular market on the outskirts of town. It wasn't a large market, but it was teeming with strange things: broken dolls, rusty keys, old clocks whose hands had stopped, and a perfume seller who smiled for no reason. But it wasn't all that attracted me. There was a small booth in the corner, piled high with old, dusty books with no clear titles. I approached it, and something sounded like a whisper in my ear, something whispering, "Come closer." Behind the table sat an old man with gray eyes. He looked at me and said wordlessly, "You seek knowledge, but are you ready for it?" I laughed nervously and said, "Just curious, nothing more." He pointed to a small book, covered in dark brown leather, thick despite its small size, with no title, only a symbol engraved on the cover, a pentagram inside a circle. I reached for it, then suddenly stopped. I didn't know why, but my body refused to touch it. The man smiled and said, "It's an old book, said to be a rare copy of the Lesser Key of Solomon, but don't worry, it won't open the gates of hell, unless you open it." I paid him $5 without thinking, took the book, and headed home. Little did I know that, with that simple decision, I had begun a journey. A journey towards something that would never leave me. When I returned home, I placed the book on my desk and sat down to study it. The cover was dark brown leather, and it smelled ancient, as if it had just emerged from a crypt that hadn't been opened for centuries. It had no title or author, only a symbol engraved with frightening precision, a pentagram surrounded by a circle, with incomprehensible symbols at its center. I didn't open it immediately. Something inside me was pushing me to first search for this book, which the old man had described as the Lesser Key of Solomon. I opened my laptop and began searching. And what I found was terrifying in itself. The Lesser Key of Solomon, also known as Clavicula Salomonis Regis, is a famous book of sorcery, said to have been written in the 17th century, but its contents are much older. It is attributed to King Solomon, peace be upon him, who, according to some legends, controlled spirits and jinn with his magic ring, and who recorded the rituals for summoning and torturing them in secret books. The book consists of 5 sections, the most famous of which is called the Ars Goetia. This section accurately describes 72 jinn kings and princes, their names, their ranks in hell, their appearance when summoned, and what they can do if properly summoned. Each entity has a special symbol called a sigil, a magical shape that must be precisely drawn within a specific ritual to summon the entity. Each ritual requires specific tools, spells written in ancient Latin, and sometimes, human blood. What shocked me is that this book has been copied and translated several times, but most complete copies have either been lost or officially banned. Some historians consider it a myth, while others believe it is the most dangerous book of magic ever written, and that anyone who opens it and practices what is in it will never be the same again. Was my copy original? Or just an imitation? I didn't know. But something about that cover, in that scent, in the words I would read later, made me feel that what I had acquired was far more dangerous than I had imagined. I didn't open it that night. All I did was put my hand over it, and felt a slight heat beneath my skin. I said to myself, tomorrow, just one look. I didn't know that one look could open a door that won't close. The next morning, I was immersed in a sea of curiosity. The book was still on the desk, waiting for me. I took a deep breath, pulled up a chair, and sat in front of it. My fingers lingered over the cover. The leather was rough, yet strangely warm, like a living, breathing creature. Quietly, I opened the first page. No title. No introduction. Nothing I was used to in books. Just symbols, curvy letters, some resembling Latin, others I'd never seen before. I tried reading aloud, but no word came out. The lines blurred, as if they were moving slowly before my eyes. I tried to concentrate. On one page, there was a carefully drawn circle, in the center of which was a pentagram, and beneath it a long piece of text in strange letters. I began to feel dizzy. A faint buzzing sound began in my ears, and an inner voice repeated, "Read. Read. Just read." But how could I read something so incomprehensible? I tried taking a picture of the page with my phone and using translation apps, but all the apps failed, as if the text was invisible. Oddly, sometimes the letters would transform into something I recognized, but only for a few seconds, and then they would change again. Doubts began to swirl in my mind. Is the book real? Do these symbols carry some kind of magic that distracts the mind? Or am I spiraling into a spiral of obsession? When I reached a page with a title written in large print, I paused. The title was clear and unique in Old English. To summon what is unseen, speak what is forbidden. I felt a chill run down my spine, and a chill hit my shoulder. I quickly closed the book, put it in a desk drawer, and locked it with the key. I said to myself, as I prepared for bed that night, I'm just interested. I just want to know. This isn't real. But deep down, I knew that by opening that book, I had knocked on the first door. 3 days passed since I opened that book. I tried to forget. I went back to focusing on my studies. I didn't want to delve any deeper. But something wouldn't let me rest. The first night, I was asleep. Suddenly, around 3 a.m., I heard a faint sound, as if someone was breathing near my ear. I opened my eyes. It was pitch black, and the whole house was silent. I said to myself, just imagining it. Maybe I fell asleep and didn't feel it. But the next day, something happened that made me doubt myself. I was in the kitchen making coffee, and I heard footsteps coming from the corridor. The whole house was mine. I stood still, dead silence. I heard the footsteps again, light, but getting closer. I walked slowly toward the door, my heart pounding like war drums. I turned on the hallway light, but there was no one there. I began to feel like I was being watched, as if something was staring at me from the shadows, but every time I looked, I found nothing. That night, while I was in bed, I heard a slight dragging sound, as if a chair was sliding across the floor. I got up and went to the living room. The chair in front of the desk moved backward slightly, but why? I hadn't moved it, and at this time, it didn't make sense. I went back to bed, unable to sleep. In those moments between sleep and wakefulness, I heard a faint but clear voice. Jack. A harsh, strange voice, as if coming from a deep well. I leaped out of my bed, my eyes darting around the room. I turned everything over. I even searched under the bed. There was no creature there. But a faint, cool smell of smoke hung in the air, as if a hookah had been extinguished, as if a fire had been extinguished in the darkness. This was when I realized that this wasn't just my imagination. There was something in this house, and it began when I opened that book. I said to myself, I have to go back, read carefully, understand. Maybe I've found something dangerous, and I don't know. But what I didn't know was that a book isn't just words, it's a door. And a door, not everyone who opens it can close it. I was sitting in my study, banging my hands on the table, my eyes wide open as if I hadn't slept in days. I could no longer live with the fear creeping in from every crack in the room. I had to understand. Am I going crazy? Or was there really a hidden power in that book? I took out the book again. The Lesser Key of Solomon. Heavy, its pages before my eyes, written in an ancient language, bearing symbols and letters I'd never seen before. But this time, I wouldn't let it win over me. I went to the university library, entered the researcher's website, and typed in the book's title. I found myself entering a dark and mysterious world. The book is well known to those interested in the occult and ancient magic. Its full name is Lemegeton Clavicula Salomonis, the Lesser Key of Solomon. It is divided into 5 parts, the most famous of which is called Ars Goetia, and contains a list of 72 demons that King Solomon is said to have been able to control using magical talismans and names. Each of these entities has a specific function and a method for summoning them. It is unknown who wrote the book, but it is said to have been compiled by anonymous authors over the centuries and translated into several languages. Its origins date back to the 17th century, and perhaps earlier. Among the words I read in that book were Baal, Paimon, Agars, Bur. Demon names, each associated with a symbol and sign. I grabbed one of those signs that I happened to see in the book. I searched the site until I found a symbol that closely resembled it. It read, "This sigil belongs to the demon Furfur, who whispers lies and commands storms." I stopped here, turned a new page in the book, and saw the same symbol, the same shape. What did this symbol have to do with an old book? And did it have anything to do with what I heard that night? That voice that called my name? I went home, entered my room, and opened the page with the symbol on it. And at the bottom, there were words written all by themselves, as if someone were speaking to me. "You opened the door, now pay the price." I opened the door, now pay the price. My heart began to beat rapidly. I never imagined that my mere curiosity would lead me down this path. But I knew. There was no turning back now. The book began to move of its own accord. And the world you had opened for me would not close easily. I swear I no longer live my life as I did before. The book exhausted me, my mind wouldn't shut down, and I couldn't sleep or rest. But in the midst of this obsession, I finally understood one page. It was written in a language resembling Latin, but distorted and very difficult. One page, but it contained so much. It contained a method for summoning an entity called Marcosius, one of the 72 demonic entities in the Ars Goetia. What caught my attention was the sentence written beneath the name. Whoever summons him, a terrifying awe is clothed in him. And whoever approaches him, fear is planted in his heart, without cause. I stopped and read the sentence over and over. Are people afraid of me? Without my doing anything? Without anyone explaining why? I liked the idea very much. I felt a hidden force drawing me to this ritual. I knew it was dangerous, but I said to myself, I just want a little respect. I want people to keep their distance from me, to not treat me like I'm worthless. One dark night, it was almost 3 a.m. I closed the windows, turned off the lights, lit the candles, and drew a magic circle in the middle of the floor of my room, with the same symbols I'd seen in that book. I began to read the words in a low voice, my heart pounding. Domini spiritum, voco te. Marcosias, audi vocem meam. The cold began to creep in from all sides. But the windows were closed. I felt the wind whispering in my ear. And I began to hear the voice. It wasn't an ordinary voice. It was coming from inside my head. Who summoned me? I remained silent. I continued the ritual in a trembling voice. Jack. I'm the one who called you. I want you. I want people to be afraid of me, without knowing why. I'm tired of being weak. Silence. Even the candles went out at once. And the cold turned to ice. And I saw a shadow forming inside the circle, moving, distorting. Not an animal, not a human. Something indescribable. The voice said, "Done, permission, I give, the price, later." And suddenly, everything disappeared. The light came back on, the candles were lit. And I was still where I was, sweating, trembling, but I felt a strength inside me. The next day, I went to university. The first person I met changed his ways. The second stopped staring at me for a while, closed his mouth, and began to back away. Even my professor stopped explaining and said, "Jack, I don't know what's going on with you, but today I felt something really bad." I laughed. Yes, I laughed. I said to myself, I'm starting to feel strong. But at night, while I was in bed, I heard the door open, and I'm sure I'd locked it. And I heard footsteps, heavy, walking toward me, stopping by my bed. And a voice whispering to me, in a terrifying voice, "Fear is just the beginning. The reckoning is yet to come." And now, I'm no longer me. I've become a new version of myself, one that knows no fear. People avoid me, and no one looks me directly in the eye anymore. In class, on the street, even in a cafe. I just look, and they run away. I would walk in without speaking, and people would fall silent. I became a mysterious force. And I confess, I liked it a lot. I would walk past girls, and they would lower their heads for no reason. I would speak in a low voice, but my words would silence everyone. For the first time in my life, I felt important. And I forgot. I forgot the talisman, the exchange page, which makes that entity withdraw after it's finished. I forgot to redraw the circle, and I forgot to return to the book. And one day, while I was looking for it again, I said to myself, what will happen? Everything is fine, the entity is working, and the result is clear. And that was my biggest mistake. Days passed, and I didn't feel it, but I had changed. I began to feel like I was seeing shadows hovering in the room, and hearing whispers in my ear, unintelligible, like a language from another world. Once, while I was washing my face in the bathroom, I saw the shadow of something standing behind me. It wasn't me, not a human. When I turned around, there was nothing there. But I was happy, and my heart was full of pride. I said, I'm Jack, and people tremble at me. Why do I keep asking for change? Why do I stop feeling so powerful? I would go into the night feeling like something was guarding me. Like a shadow that never slept, never walked, always standing by my side. As the days passed, it drew closer and closer. But I was drowning in illusion. I buried the talisman in the dust, closed the book, and said to myself, I no longer need it, the entity is mine. But I didn't know that the entity wasn't my servant, it was waiting for payment. A week passed. 7 days I lived in the illusion of power, in the illusion of grandeur, not knowing that every moment of those moments was being counted against me. I thought I had control, that I had subdued that entity, and that it would remain mine forever. But there was no contract for eternity. The book. That damned book, it said it clearly, but I didn't understand. I didn't read, or rather, I didn't want to read. The duration, 7 days. After that, the exchange must be made. Otherwise, the entity is released, and it begins to decide. The first sign came on the night of the 8th day. I was asleep, and suddenly I felt a chill pierce my chest. Not an ordinary chill, but as if a hand was trying to enter my ribs. I opened my eyes. It was 3 and 7 in the morning. And the shadow was standing in front of me. Tall, silent, but not still. It was breathing, and I wasn't. He was staring, and I was trying not to look. I started screaming, but no sound came out. It was as if my throat was suffocating, as if my soul was trapped in my throat. At that moment, I understood. I understood that the time was up. As the days passed, everything began to change. I no longer slept. And if I did, I had the same dream. I'm in a dark room, and the entity is sitting in the middle, silently watching me. I try to escape, but my feet are planted on the floor. I began to feel my body weakening. My eyes are red, even though I haven't slept. I started losing weight, and my skin looked like dead skin. And on top of all that, anyone who gets close to me gets into trouble. A classmate walked by and said, "You look sick." The next day, they found him unconscious in the university corridor. Our neighbor came to give me the key to the house I'd forgotten. That same night, he was in an accident on the road and broke his leg. I knew the entity was beginning to feed on me, and those around me. There was nothing more it could do to me. Its mission was over. And now, it wanted a reward. I wanted to go back to the book, but where was it? I looked for it, turned everything over, but couldn't find it. I went into my room, closed the door, and the voices began. Whispers, laughter, and my own voice, responding. Have you forgotten me? Now I'll remind you who's working for whom. I am Jack. And now, I am the one who works for him. I'm no longer me. My body is a thin shadow, a lifeless skeleton. My face is pale, like someone suffering from a terminal illness in its final days. My skin is stiff and cracked. My eyes are sunken in, blackened by the lack of sleep and the nightmares. Every night, the torture begins. It begins with a voice whispering in my ear. Wake up. It's your turn. Then come the blows. Not like human blows. Hands lift me out of the air and start clapping me. My chest, my back, my legs. It beats me relentlessly until I faint from the pain. And worse, it laughs. That entity isn't just a demon. It's a being who revels in my torment. One day, while inspecting an old box, I found the book. That damned book. My heart leapt. I picked it up and eagerly leafed through it, the last vestiges of hope. I found a page containing the spell of dispensation. I was delighted. I lit the candles, drew the symbol on the floor, and followed the steps carefully. I read the spells aloud, my legs trembling. The atmosphere began to change. The light dimmed. The wind began to swirl inside the house. And I felt something moving in the walls. I read the last sentence. and stopped. A minute of silence ensued. I said, "The dispensation has been effected." But I heard the voice from the corner. "Are you kidding yourself? This isn't a game." The entity was standing behind me. I didn't do anything to it. It just stood there. I began to back away. My heart was beating fast. It wasn't angry. It was amused. Then, I felt a blow in my back, knocking me to the ground. One by my side, another on my shoulder. Until the light blinded me. Amidst the agony, my eyes fell on a line in the middle of the book, still open. "Whoever does not dismiss the entity in time becomes its slave for life. It does not leave its body until death. And when it dies, the entity returns from whence it came." I froze. His slave for life? Me? Would I live my whole life at its feet? As I thought of using it to make people fear me, I closed my eyes, tears heating my cheeks. Before I passed out, I heard him say, "You are mine now, Jack, forever." This was the last night of my old life. I wished it would be my last full night. Every day the torment intensified. Every minute I was asking for death. The entity treated me as if I were its toy. Sometimes it laughed, sometimes it whispered, and sometimes it made a sound in my ear that sounded like my late mother's voice. I was on the verge of insanity, that's all. That night, at midnight, I lost hope of sleeping. I turned on my computer and started searching. Anything, any article, any video, any ray of hope. Until I found an old forum. Someone wrote, "The lesser key of Solomon is no match for true Ruqya." I opened my eyes wide. I read eagerly, and someone said, "I know what you're looking for, treatment in Saudi Arabia, but you need Ruqya performed by a man known for his piety and faith." I didn't hesitate. That night, I gathered my things and booked a flight to the nearest destination. At 10 o'clock in the morning, I was at the airport, my face exhausted, my eyes red as if I had just emerged from a grave. I arrived in Saudi Arabia, took a taxi, and headed to a simple hotel. I thought I'd get a little sleep, but no way. It was the longest night of my life. I didn't sleep. Every minute, the devil entered the room, hitting me, strangling me, pulling me by the legs. Even in the mirror, I saw him smiling at me wickedly. In the morning, I left like a refugee fleeing war. I went to the place mentioned in the forum. A small mosque in an old neighborhood, and behind it a modest house. I knocked on the door, my heart trembling. An elderly sheik came out, dressed in white, with a white beard and a radiant face. I looked at him, my tears not stopping. I said to him in a broken voice, "Please, please. I'm going to die." He didn't say anything. He just opened the door, let me in, and closed it behind me. He sat me down next to him. Before I could speak, he placed his hand on my head and said, "Okay. I know the problem." I froze. How did he know? From where? What did he see? He didn't reply. He just began to read in a quiet, reverent voice. At first, I felt at ease. But suddenly, a fire erupted in my chest. It was as if something was boiling inside me. The entity began to struggle. It began to speak in my voice, screaming and saying, "It's mine. Mine." I was crying, screaming, and trembling. The sheik didn't move. The voice began to change. It was no longer my voice, nor the voice of a strange being, screaming and suffering and saying, "I will return. I will return. I will stay." And at that moment, there was silence. Then I felt as if the wind had left my chest. I cried. I cried like a child being returned to its mother's embrace. My body felt heavy, but my mind was at ease. I felt something separate from me. I returned to the hotel. And that night, for the first time, I slept. There was no whisper, no scream, no entity. I slept peacefully like a baby, my tears warming on the pillow. I am Jack. And this is my story. A story begun by curiosity, completed by ignorance, but finished by a strong will. Thank you so much for following the story until the very end. Will Jack live a peaceful life? Or will he remain a perpetual stalker? The next stories will be even stranger and even scarier. Don't forget to support the video by liking it, subscribing to the channel, and activating the bell to stay up to date. With you was Werex. See you in the next story.